Good evening, everyone. We'll get started. We'll let folks trickle in for the next minute or so and get started then. So hang tight. We'll get started soon.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Like Daniel said, we definitely appreciate you all making the time to sit in on this parent support orientation for our Panhellenic Association primary recruitment for this year. So glad that you'll have been able to make it. A couple of logistical pieces. So we will start the presentation. However, if you have any questions, please wait till the Q&A section of the presentation so we can address them there as well. To keep in mind that we will open the Q&A function of the webinar also to that point, and we will also be answering questions that way as well. So just know that again, there'll be definitely a lot of opportunities for you to ask any questions you want to ask. This is really the purpose behind this web orientation. So you can also ask some questions towards the end. So with that said, we'll go ahead and get started with the orientation itself. So just kind of a quick introduction. So again, my name is Francisco Lugo. I'm currently serving as the Director of Fraternity Sorority Life here at Georgia Southern. This is actually my 12th recruitment cycle here on campus, and then I'll allow the folks on the call introduce themselves, and then we'll go ahead and start it.
Hi, everyone. My name's Daniel McBurney. I'm the Assistant Director of Fraternity and Sorority Life here at Georgia Southern, working specifically at the Statesboro campus, and I get the pleasure of advising our Panhellenic Association here as well.
Hi, everybody. My name is Harriet Baker, and I serve as a facilitator to our recruitment program, assisting the Panhellenic and the chapters with all that goes into the mechanics of the next week.
And just know that we also have additional staff. They will be on the premises throughout the week. So we have Emma Grace Machani, who is our assistant director at the Armstrong campus. So she's actually going to come over and visit us during that next week and spend some time with our women over here. And then we have 4 grad students who will be starting on Monday as well. So you'll be, their daughters will be seeing them around. So just know that there's definitely going to be more than enough staff supporting your daughters through this process. So just wanted to kind of make sure that that's there. And also we then want to kind of talk about the leadership within the university. Dr. Shay Little is the Vice President of Student Affairs. And then Dr. Aileen Dow is our Associate Vice President of the Students. These 2 women are affiliated with the Greek organizations themselves and are very supportive of our community and do everything they can to be present and out there and visible. So just know that, again, from a university perspective, we do have and feel that support from the top down. So just know that they are in the know of what's going on, and you'll probably see them around on bid day. And then these 2 women also, they're taking a break a little bit since they've been working all week. So Sarah Bowen, she is our current Panhellenic president, and Megan Blanchard is our vice president of recruitment. So these 2 women have been basically charged with producing this event for us. So they've been working since they got elected at the end of last fall semester. So when they started in the spring, really that's when we start with the recruitment, really. So for the last couple of weeks, they've been very intentional, very proactive in making sure that this upcoming week is in good place and ready to go when your women move in on Monday. So I just want to make sure that they are given props because they have been working hard throughout the last couple of some weeks and months to get this ready to go for you all. And I'll take it over to Danny.
Absolutely. So I want to go through some recruitment terms real quick. So in this fraternity and sorority experience, there's a lot of jargon and a lot of words you might hear and think, what's that? Or, many of you on this call were part of a fraternity or sorority, in your college experience. And, some of the words used back then might change from some of the words we use now. So definitely want to go through some recruitment terms and make sure as we speak to some of these things, you have an understanding of what we mean so that you fully understand the process. And if you're having conversations with your student, you're able to fully understand all the recruitment terminology that we use. So first and foremost is the potential new member, PNM. So those are your students. Those are the women who are participating in the sorority recruitment process. We call them potential new members because by going through the sorority recruitment process, we hope they're joining our community. So that is what we mean when we say, oftentimes abbreviating it to PNM, but potential new member. Additionally, for us to keep track of everyone, just so you know, we have 706 potential new members in our recruitment process, and we got to keep track of them. With so many different similar names and everything, it's easier for us to refer to our potential new members with their numbers. So every potential new member gets a number when they register for recruitment, and that's what we use to make sure we're keeping track of all the P&Ms and make sure we have the correct information and students when we're working with them. Next up is the PICIs. You might have heard this, but these are our recruitment counselors. So these are initiated undergraduate sorority members who have disaffiliated from their own organization for this week to help guide and support the potential new members participating in the recruitment process. Their goal is to help all the women participating find their home in the community. So these women disaffiliate, don't recruit for their organizations, and support our office and the Panhellenic Association in the recruitment process and ensuring that your students have someone who's an active sorority member in the community to help guide them, provide them information, and really help the logistics of this recruitment process move forward and move smoothly. Next is bid. If a student receives a bid is an invitation to membership in that specific organization. So at the end of the week, all the sororities extend bids. That's how the recruitment process ends. So receiving a bid means that you've received an invitation to join a specific organization. Rounds. So with this, a round is basically each part of the recruitment process. And most of the times it's a day. The first round is actually split into 2 days, but each day is themed to help women to get to know more about the chapters as well as find their best fit. So we have 4 rounds in our sorority recruitment process here at Georgia Southern. The first round is the icebreakers round, which takes place over the first 2 days. Then we have our philanthropy round, where the chapter members focus on their philanthropies, the sisterhood round, and then lastly, our preference round. And we'll dive deeper into the schedule for those later in this presentation. The next term we use is party or parties. So parties are the events that the P&Ms go to in order to meet the sorority women. So each sorority, each round has a specific number of parties, and all potential new members have a schedule to know which party they're going to know which sorority they're engaging with for that party. Those are the events that a sorority hosts to get to know women throughout the recruitment process. Each round is broken into a variety of different parties, and all the P&Ms go to those parties based on their schedule. Intentional single preference. I'll read the definition of this one point blank, and then Harriet will explain it more in depth when I hand over the mic to her. But at the end of recruitment, a P&M has decisions to make. Intentional single preference is when a P&M lists only one chapter on her membership recruitment acceptance binding agreement following the preference round. So after the preference round, a P&M has a decision to list which organizations that she may be interested in. And if she chooses to only list one organization, that's an intentional single preference. And I'll let Harriet dive deeper into that as she gets to her piece, so you understand the ins and outs of that definition. And then lastly, as I mentioned in the previous definition, the membership recruitment acceptance binding agreement, we call it the MRABA or the MRABA. But that is a binding agreement between a sorority woman or P&M going through the recruitment process and the National Panhellenic Conference. And that agreement, again, we'll let Harriet dive deeper into that, is something that's signed at the end of the recruitment week prior to bid day. So those are some of those terms that we have. And for the last few that I know are very specific, Harriet will dive deeper into those as she discusses the nuts and bolts and the logistics of the recruitment process. But now I want to speak a little bit about the recruitment week breakdown. So when I talked about the rounds, I kind of went into this, but I want to get deeper into the schedule so that y'all have an understanding of what's going on each day. So first and foremost, for all of our parents and supporters of students who are living on campus, early move-in for sorority recruitment is on Monday, August 5th. So many of you, if not all of you who have a student living on campus, have signed up for a time or should have. But that will take place. They had time slots available from 9 a.m. to 11:45 a.m. at the Watson Commons, which is where university housing is located. We'll show you a map of that, but we have tables set up so you can ask us specific questions. But basically, your student and you, if you plan to attend with them, will go there, check in, get the key, and then have the opportunity to move into your residence hall at that point. Later during the day is when we have our P&M orientation. P&M orientation takes place on Monday, August 5th, not August 1st. I missed that number, but it takes place Monday, August 5th. And it starts at 3:30 p.m. at the Performing Arts Center. This is an event that's only for students. We only have the capacity to handle students in this venue. We do ask that maybe you could stay behind in the residence halls to continue unpacking and help make the room look nice, or whatever you need to do, because this only students need to be at P&M orientation specifically. And we ask students to arrive there at 3 o'clock just so we can navigate the check-in process and get everyone in on and starting on time. So again, Performing Arts Center at 3:30 on Monday, August 5th is when P&M orientation starts. Again, here's that map. So this is what the Watson Commons parking lot looks like. So you can see down here at the bottom, closest to the university housing building on the far side, we'll have all the tables set up for you. This is where you'll come to the move-in, check-in to get the keys, get checked in, and all of those different pieces so that you can move into your residence hall. And then our table will be furthest to the left. So if you have any specific questions for us, well, we'll be there the entirety of the check-in process and happy to help you and answer any questions you may have. So, thinking about the recruitment week schedule, we already talked about Monday, August 5th being our move-in and P&M orientation. Then the first round starts, and like I mentioned, our first round is split over 2 days. So Tuesday, August 6th, and then Wednesday, August 7th is our icebreaker round. So we do something, we started this last year, and we'll continue to do this. We break all of the potential new members into 2 specific groups. The first group, groups 1 through 7, and then groups 8 through 14, we split them up and they're doing 2 different things. So P&Ms in groups 1 through 7 will be visiting all 7 sorority chapters on August 6th. That will be their time to visit all of the sorority houses and go to all of the parties on August 6th to complete their icebreaker round. Then the second day, to give the groups 8 through 14 that opportunity, groups 1 through 7 will be participating in programming day. So programming day is an event that takes a half day, but basically we're providing P&Ms a lot of information and resources and support in understanding the recruitment process. So Harriet will be there to give them the same exact information that you're getting later on in the presentation. So they're fully understanding of the recruitment process and logistics and understand what the process will look like. We have some fun activities and things for them to do, as well as a good keynote at the end to help them kickstart the recruitment process and get prepared for the week ahead. So groups 1 through 7 will be attending icebreakers, so all of their parties on August 6th, Tuesday, and then programming day on Wednesday. Groups 8 through 14, which is the other half of our P&M group, they will participate in programming day first. So they will go to programming day on August 6th. And then on August 7th, they will visit all 7 organizations for their icebreaker rounds. Next, on Thursday, we have our philanthropy round. So as part of the recruitment process, and Harriet will dive this a little bit further, but as you progress through the rounds, P&Ms are narrowing down their chapters that they're visiting. So with the philanthropy round, P&Ms have the opportunity to visit up to 6 organizations during that round. So they'll have a personalized schedule that day with all of their parties and the time set up for that. So they'll know which organization they're visiting at what time, and they can visit up to 6 on Thursday for our philanthropy round. Friday, August 9th, same deal, except it's Sisterhood round. And on Sisterhood round, P&Ms can visit up to 4 organizations. And the party, the duration of the parties extends at each round. So they're getting more and more time with the organizations that they're, whose parties they're attending, so that they can get to know them better and, hopefully build those relationships and have a good understanding of where they might want to end up towards the end of the week. Saturday, August 10th is our preference round. So during preference, P&Ms can visit up to 2 chapters on that day. And then after their last party, the P&Ms will submit that membership recruitment acceptance binding agreement, the MRABA. That's when they'll submit that electronically when they make their selections for which organizations they are interested in joining at the end of the preference round. And then Sunday, August 11th is bid day, the fun day. Not that all of it isn't fun, because it should be, but this is where everything pays off. So P&Ms, as they make it through the week, bid day is when they'll receive an invitation of membership from a chapter. And something important to note, especially for the parent and supporter orientation, parents are invited to bid day. We ask that y'all attend at the chapter houses, not come to the Performing Arts Center when they open their bids, but meeting them at the chapter houses for the organization that they're joining and enjoying the festivities with them and having a good time. So that is the schedule at a glance. So understanding what your students will be doing through the duration of the week and what each round entails. So now I'll pass it off to Harriet, and she'll talk to you a little bit more about the nuts and bolts and logistics of the recruitment process itself.
Thanks, Daniel. Just as Daniel mentioned, your student will progress from round to round. So how does that work exactly? And how are the participants, the P&Ms and students, how are they expressing their interest in which chapters they're making a connection with through these conversations as they develop throughout the week? So we're going to walk you through kind of an explanation of what that looks like. So your student will download and have available to them the P&M Companion app. No need to do this right now. We'll take care of all of this at their orientation next Monday. And just as Daniel pointed out, they will have this entire presentation presented to them as well next Monday and Tuesday. However, they will use that companion app every day to express their interest in where they would like to go back to in the next round. And we're able to use the software platform to match it with the invitation list that our chapters provide. And so we are looking for mutual opportunities where both your student would like to go back to that chapter specifically, and the chapter has also invited her back into their next round of parties. And so I'll give you a little bit of a visual. Daniel, you feel free just to click through and I'll narrate what's happening here. We have 7 chapters on our campus. Your student, like I said, will get to indicate whether they like that chapter or whether they didn't like that chapter. However, there's not an opportunity to cut or release a chapter. All you can do, I tell them, is say no thank you, meaning everybody is still in consideration in the event that a group that you wanted to attend has not invited you back. So what does that look like? let's say we go to our party of 7 or a round where we visit all 7 chapters. And in this chapter, I'm gonna show you 8 just because it's a little bit easier. Let's pretend there's 8 chapters in the community, and there's a maximum that we can go to in the next round. So I've attended all 8 chapters, and then I go in my PNM companion app and I indicate through clustering and ranking which chapters I'd like to go back to the most. So in this scenario, this fake scenario, of the 8 chapters, I can go to a maximum of 6. That means I can put 6 in my cluster. So those are the chapters you're seeing indicated on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side are the chapters that fall outside of my cluster, meaning of these 6, this would be my number 7 and my number 8 group. So you indicate in the app that these are my 6 that I'd like to cluster, and then I need to rank the 7th and 8th position. So if you'll advance the slide, this will show you that we put epsilon in that 7th position and gamma in the 8th in their application. As long as those are sequenced in the correct order, that's how the algorithm is going to approach matching them and prioritizing your students' interest for the next round. So just as mentioned, we'll take their submissions, their daily selections, and the algorithm will run comparing it to the invitation list provided by the chapters. So in this situation, the student would like to go back to Alpha. The algorithm checks whether Alpha has invited her back. She has. She would like to go back to Delta. The algorithm checks and says, okay, she's also invited to Delta. Then same thing with Ada. Goes and looks, and it doesn't work out with Ada. What that means is that your student wanted to go back to Ada in the next round. However, Ada did not extend an invitation to this student. If you watch the bracket in the middle, only when it didn't work out with Ada will we then consider epsilon. And we're considering epsilon before we consider gamma because they indicated they like epsilon better than gamma. But let's see what happens with the rest of the cluster. She'd like to go back to Lambda. We look at Lambda's list. She's a match. We look at Mu's list. She also is invited. We look at Nu's list. She's also invited. This is great. So of the maximum number of parties of 8 or 6 into the next round, of the maximum number of invitations you can get is 6, she already has 5. So we want to fill that 6th position because we want to maximize the number of people of chapters she's meeting. We are now going to look at epsilon to see if epsilon is a match to fill out that 6th spot. We look at epsilon's list. She's not a match. Only when it doesn't work out with epsilon do we look at gamma. Then we move into gamma's list. And then it does work out with gamma. She has a full schedule. So there's a maximum of 6 to go into the next round. And she has a schedule of 6. I will prepare you. It is not super common. It is not the norm to have a full 6. So in Georgia Southern's current arrangement and mechanics, we go from 7 chapters to 6 chapters, from 6 chapters to 4 chapters, 4 chapters to 2 chapters. In your student scenario, they may visit all 7. And then when we look at the invitation, when we look for the mutual matches within the invitation, she may only be invited to 4 in the round in which, she could have had 6 invitations. She may only get 4 invitations. In that case, she would then indicate all 4 chapters as places she's willing to go back to in the next round. And then we would go through the same process again when we're looking for 4 options. And so we would look at all 4 options and see how many options, how many invitations she got in that next round. So a full schedule is not guaranteed. A full schedule is not always the norm. And we prepare the students to anticipate that getting 6 chapters in that second round is not a given. It does not mean that you don't end up with a equally successful recruitment at the end of the week and still have invitations into the later rounds. So we just like to prepare you with that. I find, and we'll walk through a couple of common questions as it relates to this on the next slide, but I do find that understanding how much this algorithm is pushing and prioritizing what your student wants and what their interests are, that they are looking for mutual matches with who the chapter would like to spend more time with in the later rounds is very empowering to them. They are understanding that the groups that they are seeing on their schedule in that next round are people that really want to talk to them and that have already actively extended that invitation to spend more time with them. So I hope that you are following and understanding. If you were a participant in sorority and Panhellenic sorority during your time in college, it is likely this was not the organized experience, the mechanics of the experience back then. This was only implemented in the early 2000s. And so, depending on when the campus is that you attended that worked through this is called RFM, if you're more familiar, but the mutual selection process has not always been put in place. And so we find that this provides a really premier experience for the participant, in which Panhellenic is ensuring that their interest and their preferences are put forward. So that's really, really helpful for you to have in the back of your mind, and so that if they come to you with questions about how this works, you all are sharing some of the same language. Some of the common things that we hear from potential new members and parents and supporters are this notion of, oh, my daughter cut this group yesterday, or she dropped that organization yesterday. That's not how it works. You can only say no, thank you, right? We kept those bottom two in your rank, in the student's rank, in case it didn't work out with the groups in her cluster. So at no point do you actually get to cut anyone. No one ever falls off your list. They can fall down into your rank, meaning we will only look there at the point in which everybody in your cluster doesn't work out. So that's just a language correction that I think leaves students up feeling a little less frustrated if they happen to see somebody that was in their rank the day before end up back on their schedule in the next day. We don't want to give the impression that they're ranking them means that they cut them or dropped them in any way. So that's a helpful distinction to make. Mutual selection provides an opportunity to fill their schedule with chapters that are excited about meeting them and that they may want to reconsider. It is extremely likely that our chapters are very large here at Southern. And so it is extremely likely that if you have a second conversation in that same house with a different chapter member that belongs, to a different class year or friend group or has different interests, that you may reconnect with that group in a different way. The other thing about the progression of our rounds is that we introduce new topics each day. So while we have very limited amount of time to meet and greet, and in the icebreaker rounds, it is just what it is, breaking the ice. In the later rounds, we introduce what is the organization's philanthropy, and they spend a great deal of time talking about that. For many potential new members, this is a really big draw in a certain direction because they have a personal connection to it or are passionate about learning more and engaging more in that philanthropic cause. In the later rounds, they get into what it looks like and feels like to be a sister of that chapter, and there may be something there that's specific that pulls them in a direction. So it is not uncommon to put someone in your rank early in the week and then that be your chapter of choice as you progress. So just have that in mind. We're always encouraging them. They're dressed, they're ready, they're here. They are required to attend. If a chapter is on your student's schedule, they have to attend that event. Failing to attend an event just because they don't feel like it or they don't want to give that chapter another chance could result in her removal from the process. And so we make that commitment. The chapter has extended the invitation, and so we're in this process where they've accepted and they must attend that event. So we take attendance at every single round, and we'll certainly follow up. Now, we do recognize there are accidents. People go back to their rooms, they take a nap, they don't make it back in time for their event. We will reschedule them and rebook them in that process. The other really lovely part about Panhellenic being the conduit that makes all this happen, that brings us all together, is that the chapters that are in their rank but happen to end up on their schedule in the next round, they'll never know that your student put them in the rank the day before. I was explaining to our PICIs, our counselors, what this process looks like. I was like, you kind of treat your selections as your own private information, kind of like a ATM PIN number. I was like, do y'all even know what an ATM is? But I was explaining that they don't ever need to show their app to anybody. They don't need to disclose what they put even to you or any other family members that may be supporting them. It's a really private process, and we try to honor as staff and as the recruitment counselors that privacy. So the chapters will never know if someone was in their rank. They just know that they invited her back, because remember, that's the only way to get put on their schedule, is that they did invite her. So the chapter will never know that your daughter or student put them in that rank position. So that's really great. They don't have to have any type of anxiety or worry about the awkwardness that may ensue, because they don't have to tell anybody anything about how they put it in their daily selections in the round previous. And then finally, the MRABA is best explained as it is the pre-acceptance to the bid to membership. So when we complete that last round preference, where your student would attend 1 or 2 preference events, these ceremonies are a little more serious, they're a little more formal, it's a little bit more of a deep discussion. They are making a decision to join an organization for a lifetime. So within Panhellenic, you only get to join one sorority chapter. It's a lifelong membership that goes beyond your time here at Southern. And so it's a pretty big decision, and with big decisions oftentimes come contracts. And the MRABA is there for your daughter to pre-accept a bid to either of the chapters that she lists on that agreement or attended that night or afternoon. She's pre-accepting a bid without knowing which group is going to extend her the bid. So she has some choices, and this is again what Daniel alluded to earlier. She has some choices. She can list both organizations she attended, or she may choose to only list one. We are there to coach her in that moment of what her options are. Right now, where we sit today, and you may have a great deal of knowledge about what that process looks like and what it means. What we like to say is majority of our potential new members, when they attend these preference events, they are like, man, this is a tough decision. I don't know who I want. I don't know which chapter is right. Which chapter I want to put, in that number 1 spot or that number 2 spot. That's the best possible place to be, because you want to know what that means? It means on Sunday when they open the bid, they're going to be happy no matter what. And that is a huge, huge success for our week. So the best place, we have a lot of women that come in anxious about, I don't know, I feel like I'm not going to know what to pick. I feel like I'm going to be torn. That's the best place to be. So those are the easiest choices, actually. So picking 1 and 2, easy. In the event that a participant would rather not be in a sorority than to be in her second choice sorority, then we would have some additional conversations with her and offer her more options to navigate. It's really, really not worth bringing up or discussing or considering until you get through that preference round on late Saturday. In that event, your student would talk to Daniel, Francisco, or myself, and we would have that in-depth conversation about what she's doing and limiting her options on the MRABA. So I know some of you have a great deal of information about this. We're happy to answer those questions as it gets closer. It's just helpful for us all to have this shared knowledge, while we're sitting here a week out from those types of decisions. But those options are available, and they're perfectly respected options within our community as well. So on the next slide, I do think it's important that you be someone that has this information or is curious or is supportive or curious with your student if they're coming to you. Like we said, we do have recruitment counselors, but you're their biggest support system. They're used to confiding and talking and walking through all process, decisions in life with you. And so if they are reaching out, make sure that they're getting accurate information. We're here to provide that accurate information as it relates to the mechanics. And we're happy to do so. Sometimes they're really intimidated and don't want to walk up and ask a question. They're welcome to email or call. You're welcome to call. We can conference them, and we are really committed that we want all of our students to feel fully informed. That's a huge tenet of what it is that we specifically go out of our way to do here with these students. So I hope that you having even just, an introduction to this knowledge is a huge step in the right direction. You guys do us a great service by, emotionally supporting and assisting them as they walk through. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and to segue into that, it's really how are you can assist your student through this process, right? So I think we have a couple things that we want to talk through before we go to the Q&A piece. So again, is really encourage them to have an open mind. I think that sometimes we do get students who are coming like, I want to go this chapter because this is what I've always known, what I've known or seen, which is great. But I sometimes there's 7 chapters on this campus, and all 7 are great chapters. And one of the things that I told students is no matter where you end up, you're going to have a good sorority experience, especially at Georgia Southern. So it's again, just making sure that again, they're coming in with an open mind as this process. They'll get to see different people, meet different people throughout the different rounds and things like that. So it's just making sure that they're coming in with an understanding that again, things may not play out the way they think they might play out in their minds. The other thing, kind of what Harry just touched on is really maximizing their options when it comes to the recruitment process, which kind of also ties in with the open mind. The other thing that we will ask is that if you can help us help them, make sure they know their login information, especially their Eagle ID number, and also to make sure that they know their PNM number, because those are the things that they will be using throughout the week. And it's the easiest, like Daniel said earlier, it's the easiest way for us to identify your student within 706 PNMs, if that makes sense. So it's easy for us to put in the system that we use. It's easy to put that number in. All the information that we need to know about her comes up, and it's easier to answer questions, concerns, and even if it's an email or anything or a text, whatever it might be, to make sure that that is included in that communication. But also their EOD numbers is going to be crucial for them to understand how to log into the system. Same thing with their Georgia Southern credential, which is the what they use to log in to see their emails. Make sure they know that information. The other thing that I don't think it's listed, but we definitely want to make sure it also happens is to make sure and here Dana could jump in if this is something we have allowed to do or not. I can remember what we decided with their phone numbers to make sure that the phone number that is listed on their profile is theirs and not yours. Because whenever we're calling as far as something happened or they for whatever reason didn't show up, that's the number we call, and sometimes we end up calling the parents. So it's kind of like just making sure we have accurate information, if that makes sense. The other thing that we've done for the past couple of years is really we created a folio, which is basically the best way to put it. It's just a management system that we actually use for classes at Southern, but we have hijacked the system a little bit to really provide the PNMs and your students with information. So they all should already have access to the folio, and that folio has a breakdown of this of the week. It'll have information about the Maralba, information about chapter fees and things like that. So it's a wealth of information that you can also look into it as well. So if there's anything that you feel that needs to be added, feel free to let us know. But it has a wealth of information there that you can also dive into between now and Monday to kind of get a better understanding of how that process works. The other thing that we just want to make sure that we remind you and that you could remind them is that they need to be eating. Again, it's going to be long days starting on Tuesday. And also making sure they're hydrated. Again, at the end of the day, it is South Georgia, it is hot. So we just want to make sure they stay hydrated. So we do recommend that if they can bring their own water bottles with them. There's going to be opportunities for them to fill those water bottles we would have 2 different break houses on Olympic Boulevard. So they'll be able to fill those waters out. The chapters do provide filling stations throughout row as well. So they will always have the opportunity to fill those water bottles back up and whatnot. And then the other thing is to make sure they're asking questions. Really, the chapters for this past week have really been preparing to really engage with the women and answer questions that might come up. So basically, we want them to ask questions. That's the whole point of the conversations that we'll be having throughout the week. So ask questions ask about dues, ask about what their typical day looks like, what the things they do from a chapter perspective. So that's fair game. So make sure that they're asking questions that they want to know about. The other thing is that we definitely want to make sure that they are being themselves. I think the things that we see is that again the chapters can tell if somebody is not being authentic. So I just want to make sure that they're being themselves throughout this entire process. And then finally, the most important part of it is to relax and have fun. We definitely the Panhellenic Council and the podcast have done a great job in preparing this for you all and your students. So we're going to be able to support them through this process. And it is a fun process. And like Harriet said, ultimately at the end, what the student gets out of it is joining an organization for a lifelong commitment piece. The benefits are there. So just keep those things in mind, and you could definitely encourage your student to kind of keep these things in mind. That would be greatly appreciated from our end. And like I said, it is South Georgia. So make sure that you also encourage your women to bring a raincoat, a umbrella, something that will keep her dry. Because we do know that it rains during recruitment at some point. Again, it's been your typical tradition that it rains and at some point throughout the week, or maybe a couple of days in during that week. So just know that that's going to be something that they're going to be using. Same thing if they want to have like a little fan, feel free to also have that. The other thing, kind of again, they can definitely bring bags with snacks and whatever they need to be able to navigate the week. Just know that Panhellenic does provide snacks in the break rooms. They also provide feminine hygiene materials as well. So all those things will be provided as well in case they need them. So or they forget. So those things will be provided. I think I can't stress this enough. They will be walking a lot throughout the week. So one of the things that we definitely encourage them to do is to dress comfortably. And I get it that they want to be fashionable and things like that. But I would highly suggest that they bring a comfortable walking shoes. And if they feel that they need to change their shoes right before they go into the party, we would definitely encourage that, just because again, they're going to be walking a lot. And just want to make sure that they are comfortable throughout the week as they move forward. So I will hand it over to Daniel for the Q&A portion of it. First, that we'll do the commonly asked questions, and then we'll open up to you all.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to dive into some frequently asked questions. So hopefully by answering these, we can knock out some of the bulk of the questions that you may have, and then some of the ones that we most commonly get either through email, phone call, at source sessions if we saw you, or anything else. So just diving through some of the bulk of the ones, and then we could dive into a Q&A session, and I'll enable the Q&A function at the end of this. So the first question, and even a misconception to a point, is how many spots are in a sorority. There's an idea that there are a limited amount of spots in sororities and different things like that. The amount of spots or availability for a woman to join a sorority through the primary recruitment process is totally dependent on the amount of women going through the process. There is no limit for the amount of women a chapter could bring in during the sorority recruitment process. With that being said, by the end of the week, we look at the total number of potential new members who have been matched with an organization, and really try to spread that evenly and have a distribution of women across the process that fit and have matched with an organization. So the idea that an organization only has a select amount of spots to give women going through the process, or only a certain amount of women going through the process will be able to get into an organization. Any woman who goes through the process has the ability to join an organization on our campus. So there isn't a limit or a cap or anything per se. That quota number we set at the end of the week is based on the amount of women that are still in the process. It is not a number that, keeps women out of sororities. At the end of the day, we want as many women matching with sororities as possible, and that's how the mutual selection process works. And how it does is optimize that so that as many women are getting into organizations as possible. Harriet, did you want to add anything to that piece? Perfect.
I think that's great.
Perfect. So another common question we have is about attendance from parents and supporters to recruitment. Really the big two events that we ask parents if you want to come to be at really are move-in, so helping your student move into their residence hall on campus and bid day. The rest of the week is really just for the students. They'll be busy through the vast majority of the week anyways. They'll be in those parties, running around, and making new connections and building relationships. And for us, we just ask that they have that experience, and then you can help them move in, and then at the end of the week you'll also help celebrate with them. That's what we hope. So and again, and specifically for the bid day piece, parents don't come to the Performing Arts Center with their student when, we hand out the bids and open them and different things like that. Y'all would meet your student at the chapter facility of the organization that she received a bid to. So that's where you can participate and join. Another common question we receive is, will the dining halls be open since many students participating in the sorority recruitment process are moving in early? And the answer is yes. Dining halls will be open and meal plans will be active. So that is an important piece to note. Meals will be there. We block out a strong 2-hour time block for lunch. So we really hope that P&Ms are taking that into account and eating, and again, having that full meal so that they're taking care of themselves and they're fueled for the very busy recruitment experience. And I also want to mention that for women who don't have a meal plan for any reason, whether they don't live on campus or you're a sophomore or junior or upperclassman, we provide lunch at the dining halls for those days. So that is covered as well. So, there's no reason to skip that lunch period. We cover it as an Panhellenic. So even if you don't have a meal plan, you do have a meal during that time. So please don't let that deter your students from getting lunch that day. It's covered. The next piece I wanted to go through is, because again, we get this question too, how will my student get to recruitment each day, and general questions about parking. So with the parking situation, students are expected to meet us at Watson Hall during the icebreaker rounds, and then they can report to Olympic Boulevard, commonly known as Row, for the rounds, philanthropy, sisterhood, and preference rounds, because they get their individual schedule, and not all of them will have a party for the very first party. So with that being said, want to make sure that we have 700 women going through this process, as well as another 1,300 who are participating from the chapter side. That's a lot of vehicles. So your student will get additional parking instructions in an email that will come out on Sunday. But the important piece to note is that we ask all students to walk to Watson Hall and Row to participate in the recruitment process, so that we're not clogging up all the parking areas. I will say some of the lots that will be open through the week, lots 29, 31, and 32 have been designated as open for that space. And then another important parking piece that I want to mention, sometimes students park in the patient-only parking spots at health services. And I want to be very clear that that is an absolute no-no, and that if they do park there, their car will be towed. So if it's patient-only parking or any special designated parking of that realm, definitely make sure they're not doing that. We recommend walking. it doesn't take too terribly long. And if there are accommodations that we need to make, if your student has any mobility issues or anything that would make walking to row an issue, making sure that they let us know that ahead of time so that we can make accommodations for them and get them to their sorority parties on time and make those happen. Another question we get is about schedule conflict. So if your student has any sort of schedule conflict, we accommodate student schedules the best that we can. So we know that many of your students are athletes, are part of the honors program, are ROTC, or maybe have a job at CRI. And all those things, they have events and different things that happen during the sorority recruitment week. And all those departments, if they're doing something on campus, always give us a heads up of what time those are happening. So we do work with your students to reschedule parties and do our best to accommodate those schedules and get them back into as many parties as possible, and potentially excusing them depending on why they're missing, depending on that situation. What I will say is that is very important. And Harriet, if you want to chime on this as well, if they're missing a good chunk of the day and they have more parties than they're able to attend, your student will not be able to pick and choose which parties that they want to go to. It's randomly assigned on their schedule, and they'll go to the parties that they're randomly assigned to that point. So they don't get to pick and choose if for some reason they'll be gone for a longer duration than they can go to parties, if that makes sense. So I want to be very clear about that piece, and we make that very clear with all the students as well.
And I want to mention our chapters are very understanding. I don't think this has an adverse reaction on their progress or their ability to make connection with the chapter. In fact, I think, someone will have a wedding on Saturday or need to leave early on Friday. Tell the chapters early in the week. We tell the students, tell the chapters early in the week, I won't be here for preference. I'd like to have some conversations early about joining your group. So we will coach them to the best of our ability. And I genuinely don't feel it has an impact on their recruitment.
And the next piece I want to go to, and this is the most important piece for all schedule conflicts, we announce it at P&M orientation, but for any of your students, any of the P&Ms that are going through the recruitment process, if they have a schedule conflict at any point throughout the week, they cannot leave P&M orientation without talking to Harriet, Francisco, or I, so that we can jot down what their conflict is. Because as we go throughout the week and they're putting in their selections and we're getting parties set up, we need to be able to schedule them on the back end and ensure that we're not scheduling them for a time that we know that they have a conflict. So that helps us out. They should not be leaving that orientation without talking to us directly. So if you know your student does have a conflict, please make sure they connect with us before leaving P&M orientation. Another big piece about schedule conflicts and just other things that we have heard, questions we've gotten throughout SOAR and different things like that. Some of the schedule conflicts that we sometimes receive, we try to accommodate as many of them as we can, but we do want to make sure that students are prioritizing this sorority recruitment experience as much as possible, right? There are some things you can't miss, like, I think every year we have a wedding that comes up, or something similar, something of that effect that we know that you're not missing, a family member's wedding for sorority recruitment, and we get those pieces. But for things that don't raise to that scale of importance, we will still try to accommodate the best that we can. But I think as staff members, we also want to, specifically talking to you as parents and supporters, ensure you understand the scope of what the day is. And if there are things that are optional or maybe not as critical for them to attend, that they are staying on campus and enjoying fully investing that time, particularly from a safety standpoint. Many of these students, they're spending very long hours in the sun and spending a lot of time navigating this process, not only expending physical energy, but emotional energy and all these other pieces. It's a big process. So we do highly recommend, if they don't need to leave Statesboro or anything like that, leave the area and leave the campus, we highly recommend that they don't do it and truly do prioritize this recruitment process. Because again, it's not just a we want them here to just be focusing on recruitment, but also focuses on a safety piece, especially if they have to drive hours to whatever their obligation is. We understand that there are some that you absolutely have to attend, like the weddings, the, very crucial events. So obviously you have to make do and navigate that as much as possible. But if you can avoid it, we highly recommend you do that, not from it just a, recruitment standpoint, but an overall safety and concern piece as well. Another question, and we've gotten quite a few of these from students and supporters and everyone else. What if my student is having issues with the educational modules? Want to answer that question specifically, the sexual assault prevention module. The campus partner that we've partnered with that is in charge of navigating and implementing this module for the campus. We know there's kinks with it, and there have been issues getting students access to that module and making sure it's available to them. So I think the very ground rule that, if you take anything away from this part of the FAQ is, if your student's having an issue with the module, we are not preventing them from going through the recruitment process. They can still very much participate and be good to go. They will still end up doing any of the modules that they're having issues with. They will still need to do them, but we know there are kinks in the system and we're navigating them, and we'll provide them with further instructions on P&M orientation to kind of navigate how we can make sure that they can get those modules completed either during or after a recruitment process. Because again, we're not going to prevent anyone from going through the sorority recruitment process, especially when it's not to the fault of the P&Ms. It's more of a technological issue in the background. We would never do that. So our key is that they get the educational information from all those modules that we have, and making sure that they're good to go and have the information they need to be successful in the fraternity and sorority experience, as well as Georgia Southern. So with that being said, if they have been able to get access to all the modules, when they complete the module, they'll receive a certificate of completion. They download that certificate or take a screenshot, whatever is easiest for them, and then they upload that directly into the Folio account. So that is, if they do have the access and they need to knock it out, that is the process for completion, is get the completion certificate and upload it into that Panhellenic Recruitment Folio account that they all have access to. The next question I want to answer is, if my student withdraws from the recruitment process, can they still join a sorority? And the answer is yes. Withdrawing from the sorority recruitment process means that they have the opportunity to join another organization, not just in the spring semester through a spring recruitment process, but there may also be opportunities to join in the fall semester as well. I will say for the fall and spring semesters, select chapters who may be recruiting, it may be limited. So their options may be limited after the primary recruitment week period, or if they wait until the spring semester. But with that being said, there are still opportunities to join sorority through a process that we call continuous open bidding, or COB. So after the recruitment process, if the chapter still has the ability to take in members, they will host events throughout the semester. And that's your students' opportunity to get to know them, to have conversations with them, a bit more informal than this fully structured full recruitment week that they're about to go through, and build those relationships. And through that, they can be extended a bid from an organization to join. So with that being said, if they join, or if they withdraw from the recruitment process this week or next week, they still have the opportunity to join a sorority, with the caveat that the options they have may be a little bit more limited. The primary recruitment process, the primary recruitment week, is the only opportunity students have to join any of the 7. That's their one time where all 7 are guaranteed to be recruiting. And then lastly, a big question we get are how much are dues? So what I want to do is in the chat, I am going to drop a Google Drive link. So this Google Drive link is a link to all of the financial transparency forms for all of the women's organizations participating in the sorority recruitment process. So now you have access to all the financial transparency forms through this Google Drive link. So every organization that participates in the sorority recruitment process is required to insert all of this information about their chapter's dues and how the dues are broken down, so that anyone joining an organization knows exactly what the financial expectations are for membership. You'll see 3 different cost breakdowns. The first one will be the first semester joining dues. So if you were at SOAR over the summer, you'll know that we've mentioned your first semester joining a sorority is going to be a bit more expensive because there are some one-time fees associated with joining an organization. So you'll see those fees specifically in that cost breakdown, but that'll be the first one. The next 2 are the cost breakdown for living in the chapter facility and living outside of the chapter facility. So again, you can see the cost breakdown between those 2. So you understand what the obligations are from a financial perspective. And all of your students have this information through the Folio account as well. But we will, since, you know, students might not be acclimated to the Folio system yet, they'll receive this through the P&M orientation as well, so that they have quicker access if they've had issues with their Folio account. But these are all available to you and required for all of our organizations to provide, so that you and your students are making the best decision, not only from who do you belong with the best, and you know, who are you building relationships with, but how can you meet the financial obligations that are necessary for joining one of our organizations as well.
So the only thing that I would add to that is that the chapters will go over these forms with the women during the philanthropy round, right? Is that correct, Daniel?
Yes.
So just know that, again, this is the time for your students to really ask the questions. because that is a requirement for each chapter to go in detail through these forms. So there's no questions like concerns later on, if that makes sense. So we definitely encourage you all to encourage your student to really ask the questions that they need to ask when it comes to the financial commitment piece, and then make it a educated decision on where they want to be able to afford to be part of it, if that makes sense. And I know that was a lot of information in an hour, basically. So now we want to open it up to Q&A. So Daniel will open up the Q&A he already has. So feel free to start asking questions, and we'll do our best to, one, answer the question. We might just group them all together if we see themes coming up. But if there's anything specific that you want to ask, feel free. One of the things and the reason why we invest in this presentation or orientation is because we know that, again, you are an added value to us, and you can basically help us assist your woman or your student going through this process. So we want to make sure that we answer any and whatever questions you might have about the process and how this works, so you can better be a resource for them, with the understanding, like Harriet said, we'll be out there supporting them throughout this process at all times. So if there is something that they feel that they want to have a little bit more information or explain it in a different way, feel free to let us send them to us, and we'll definitely clarify things for them. So we'll be out there the entire week with them. So this is not something that we just let the students do their thing. The staff will be hands-on with these things, but the women will be the ones that will be running the show and whatnot. So with that said, I think we have a couple questions, and we'll get started.
Yeah. So the first few questions that I've seen are about start and end dates for each day. So the starting time for each day, we ask all of our potential members to be in the Watson parking lot, specifically on icebreakers, at 8 a.m. So we want to get them there so we could get them separated into their groups and get the women we need on row, and as well the women who are attending programming day on programming day. The rest of, and typically that day goes until, I have the schedule in my brain because I've been looking at it so much. Typically around 6:30 is when the final party ends for that specific day, if they're going to the parties that day. If they're going to programming day, then it ends at noon. We release them when we release them to lunch. So that's an important piece. The rest of the days, philanthropy, sisterhood, and preference round, we do have a similar schedule, that 8 a.m. to typically around 6 or so at night is when students should have that time block available as much as possible outside of the schedule conflicts that we've talked about. However, kind of like we talked about, all their schedules for those individual rounds are different. So for example, sisterhood round or philanthropy round, which is the round, our second round directly after icebreakers, you could visit up to 6 organizations. We have 10 parties scheduled for philanthropy round. So your student might not have to attend a party until party 4 or 5, which means they have the first half of the day free, right? So it's important that they understand and are looking at that schedule. So that they know what's expected of them, but really keeping that 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. time block as open as possible, so that we're able to make those schedules and get them into the parties that they need to go into. So with that being said, we also have a couple questions about what times bids will be distributed on bid day. So we ask all of our P&Ms to come to the PAC at the Performing Arts Center at I believe 9 a.m. For them to open their bids at 10 p.m. after some programming and different things. But we have bids scheduled to be open in the PAC at 10 p.m. Typically, it's really dependent on the organization when you should plan to be at Olympic Boulevard if you choose to attend. I think a good rule of thumb probably would be around 10:30 because we have to have some time to, one, your student has to text you which organization they've received a bid to. So you need to know which chapter facility to go to. But two, we also need some time to divide them into their new sororities and walk them down there in groups. So with that being said, a general rule of thumb that we've given parents is that 10:30 time frame. That being said, I do want to make sure that y'all know Olympic Boulevard will be closed to cars and like general traffic. So you will need to park and walk onto Olympic Boulevard. No cars will be allowed on Olympic Boulevard for bid day. So it's important to know that piece. And Harriet,
I also want to be really clear. While parents are allowed to be at bid day, and it is normal, it is not required. And I will say, as someone who like walks by after all is said and done, your student is not paying attention to you. She is trying to make new friends. She is trying. I know that's really harsh to hear. If it's important for you to be there because you want to share in that experience and be there in the event of, you know, just wanting the photo op in the photo, I think that's great. If we're talking about exhaustive driving to be here, it is not the norm. It is I don't want to overblow it. Like, I know you all have a lot of questions about it. We don't tend to find that your student is going to spend any amount of time with you in that interaction, nor at this point, they don't have any like end time on the day. They may want to spend the entire rest of the day with their new chapter and not go to lunch, or like, I can't even guarantee that they'll want to engage. So I just want to normalize that before, if you weren't already planning that trip. I would say the majority of the people, if you are a previous member of this chapter and you want to be there in the event that it might be looking like she might join your chapter, I think that that's maybe the most common interaction. But I'm a little, I see everybody in the Q&A feeling a little like, oh my gosh, I didn't know how to take this extra trip here. You absolutely do not have to.
Yeah. I'll take a couple more. So buses, there was a question about buses. So buses will now be running. So again, there's going to be a lot of walking throughout the week and even the day of bid day as well. There was another question about specifically what login information. So basically what we're talking about is those credentials to log into your students' Georgia Southern email. So basically what we've done with the system that we use is that there's a single sign-on. So as long as they have that information with them, they will be able to sign on to the system. Like Karen mentioned, we will be using the companion app, and that login will provide that information to the students when they need it. So they really don't need that information right now because it's pointless. They won't be able to use it until Tuesday anyway. So we'll be going over that entire thing during the orientation. So those are the main things that they just need to understand for that process. The other question was, where can I find the folio? So I'll add the link to the chat as well. But it's as long as they are able to log into their My Georgia Southern portal, they'll be able to see where that folio is. So typically, let me double check. I'm currently logged in, so I thought it was. It's really under popular links. It's one of those first few ones right under the View My Eagle ID information. So it's readily available for them to be able to do it. So it says Folio Online Course Tools. That's where they would find it. And then the actual course name for the folio for recruitment is FSL PHA Recruitment. That's the actual name of the folio that they were going to be looking for once they log into that system.
I have answers to two questions that are pretty important. One is how many students are in the group. So there are PNM groups, there are 14 groups. There are 50 to 52 PNMs in each group. They'll have lots of opportunities, especially in those first 2 days, to make really great friends. My very best friend as an adult was someone I met in those first 2 days of recruitment. So lots of very early relationships to be had in those spaces. The other is about when we get into philanthropy, sisterhood, and preference rounds, and everybody's schedule is not tied to a specific group. What does that report time look like in the morning? We do not have a morning meeting on the later rounds, just the first round. We have a morning meeting where everybody is there all at the same time. Outside of that, philanthropy, sisterhood, and preference, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, she will get her schedule via email or in her companion app, and then she will need to report to Olympic Boulevard 30 minutes before her first event. So it's hers to get herself to. We'll talk to them a lot about that, but it's hers to get herself to. There's no morning meeting. There is a lovely email in her inbox every single morning when she wakes up that has so much information. Reading that email, or if she's coming to you with a bunch of questions, be like, can we read your email together and see if you can't discern some of the information and some of the questions you might have. All the information will be in those emails.
I am getting a couple questions about parking, a couple that were specific to bid day, but some general ones about the vicinity of lots 29, 31, and 32. Francisco, if you could get the link for the parking map and drop it in the chat. That's where I would suggest P&M's, parents, anyone park if they're coming to anything recruitment related. Those are the lots that, you know, talking with our parking and transportation department said were the best for, you know, navigating traffic and making sure that, you know, general university operations can still happen while, you know, we're doing bid day and recruitment and all of those different pieces. So those lots are what we always recommend. And Francisco just put the parking map in the chat. So that'll help you map out where they're at so that you could kind of know distances and specifically if your student needs to walk to recruitment, how long she should allot to do that so that we don't have folks coming up late or anything. I have a question about time commitment from the sororities. It's very pretty individual to the organization what is and isn't, you know, expected in terms of event participation and different things. But Francisco can attest, and Harriet, you can even chime in too. My general rule of thumb is that being in a fraternity or sorority is almost like taking another class. You have to attend your weekly chapter meetings, and as you're a new member, attending your weekly new member meetings. There are going to be events that are required, so things like leadership trainings and educational seminars that your chapter requires or our office requires in order for you to navigate the sorority experience on some of those different things. Some things that the chapters may require, so attendance to specific events on campus or events with other organizations or different those pieces. And then I would say the bulk of the time that our students spend with their organizations aren't actually obligations, but more of just they want to hang out with their sorority sisters. So spending time at the house or going to social functions or doing any of the social things. I think those are what you can expect as a bare minimum for expectations from the sorority experience. And then we also love to say too that with all that being said, it's also what your student wants to put into the sorority experience as well. So the time commitment of a member who doesn't have a leadership position looks a lot different than the chapter president of an organization, and all those different pieces. So, you know, if your student is super interested in really, you know, getting as much out of the sorority experience as possible, there's plenty of opportunities for leadership, and those are, you know, time consuming as well, and opportunities that she can take. But overall, my general rule of thumb answer is kind of like adding another class to your schedule.
And I'll take these two. There's definitely it's a great question. Yes, the chapters will have their own individual family parent weekend, so they're typically not associated with the university one, so they'll do their own. So just keep an eye out for that information. So that is more later on. But the chapter will share that information with your student at some point. Have a question about parent gift bags. So the reality is that that's being done with it from an outsider vendor, has nothing to do with the university or Panhellenic itself. So the way that, from our understanding, how that's going to work is really more about, again, once the women will know once they get their bid that day, that morning, really. So our understanding of how that process might work is that that person will have enough for everybody. But we're not certain to what that degree looks like, since we're not involved in that process whatsoever. And it's not something that is being handled through the office or Panhellenic, if that makes sense. So I think that that's a question more for whoever is putting that information out there, that will need to be followed up on from that process. And Daniel, I'll let you handle the average. Talk about retention rates, or Harry, you want to talk about retention?
Yeah, I don't mind. The question is, how many girls don't get a bid on average? I would say Georgia Southern has an incredibly high retention rate and placement rate as in compared to the national standard of recruitments. However, I would also like to emphasize, without giving an actual number or an average, I would like to emphasize the majority of women who start the process and don't end up with a bid at the end of the week is by their own choosing. Either something in the process has revealed themselves that this is not, that sorority is maybe not something that they are interested in or can prioritize right now, or they didn't feel the type of connection they thought that they might with the chapters that were continue to invite them back. And so they are self-withdrawing from the process. That is the majority of the people that end up without the bid. Now, we have a very high retention rate. I've made the mistake in the past of offering an average or offering a statistic. And I don't want to do that, but I do want you to know that I find the women that don't end up with bids still feel very empowered and like they saw the process through. And then I would continue to brag on this campus specifically about women that choose to opt out or withdraw from the process themselves end up being placed or getting a bid at some other point in their collegiate career, if they so choose. The chapters on our campus are great about offering opportunities when roster spots become available, whether that be later this fall or in the spring or through a sophomore cycle. That's a very normal, very common, and high percentage of success when that student is ready to reapproach joining, that there will be options for her at that point. So not offering any type of averages, but very positive interactions here, even with the women that are choosing on their own to withdraw.
I think the other question that was asked, it was about cell phones and what they should have. I mean, I think the reality is, like we said earlier, your students should have whatever they need to have them be able to navigate the entire day. And again, it's going to be a long day, so yes, they can have their cell phones. Again, that we definitely encourage them to have a bag to put all those things in. If there's anything that they need from a medical perspective, they should definitely carry it with them at all times. So I think the reality is that there's no need to leave their phone at the dorms or anything. They can bring them with them. They can leave them outside once they come, before they go into the parties. So just whatever they need, they can bring with them. So just know that that's not going to be a hindrance in the process.
Yeah. Did get a question about study abroad. So maybe there's other parents of students in here who have students wanting to explore study abroad options. I will say this happens, it is pretty individual to organization. So I can't give the most accurate general answer, but at the end of the day, all of our sororities want our students to be successful academically and explore all their academic options. So whatever they classify as, like, most organizations, if not all of them on our campus, offer a special status for students who are still enrolled in the university but studying abroad at, another country or different things like that. I couldn't even think of what study abroad meant back then. Most of our organizations, if not all of them, have opportunities for students to take that special status. And what that special status entails is very different across organizations. So there are some financial components to that, or different things that, may look different. And I can't speak to those, or those are some questions that we would highly encourage your students to kind of ask as they're going through the recruitment process. And I also think that's an incredible topic to talk about during the recruitment process. Something very interesting to talk about. But with that being said, all of our organizations have some sort of special status that supports students pursuing those study abroad endeavors. What that means for an individual organization varies, but overall, yes, she will definitely have the opportunity to study abroad and still maintain active, good standing in her organization.
Any other questions that you might come up or have come up as we have been answering some of these? Again, all have been great questions. Again, anything that you want to know, this is the time to ask. We are here to make sure that you have everything you need to be a resource to your student. Because the reality is, we know that they're going to reach out to you before they reach out to us sometimes. So we just want to make sure that you are knowledgeable and can seen to talk up to the experience itself. So because the reality is, this process has changed since a few years, especially you have affiliation with some of these MPC organizations. The process has changed, and we've adapted everything. So again, we're definitely want to make sure we answer any questions you might have. Again, I know this was answered or asked. This is being recorded. Once the recording downloads, we're actually going to upload it to our YouTube channel. And I believe I can add that there. So I added it to the chat as well. So basically, if you want to go ahead and watch it before you go to bed later or the weekend, feel free. But it's going to be available to you all to review whenever you need to. And again, if there's any questions, concerns, let us know. I'm not seeing anything, but the reality is, the other thing that I was adding, Daniel, I don't know if you can put it up on the screen real quick, the contact information. So our office will be staffed throughout the week. Again, if there's anything that you'll need, any questions, any concerns, anything that comes up that you feel that you need to reach out to us, again, our contact information is there. You feel free to either email Panhellenic, our office, send us a message through social media. We'll be watching all those pieces. The voicemail goes directly to our email, so we'll get those as well if nobody picks up. So again, we are going to be very attentive to these emails throughout the week. So just keep that in mind. That again, we're going to be very accessible to the students and you all. So if there's any questions, concerns, feel free to let us know. And we are here to support you all through this process as well.
All right, everyone. Thank y'all again. We hope y'all have a lovely night.
Have a good one, y'all.